There are 4 things we do to maximize the output of our avocado trees here at Sleepy Lizard Avocado Farm. And the good news for you is that you don't have to be a farmer to do these things. Follow these 4 steps in your backyard and you will get more avocados off your tree than you have ever gotten before. Tip number 1, fertilize your tree. Just like people, trees need food and water to survive. When you give them enough food and enough water, they will thrive, just like this Simmons variety behind me that is loaded with fruit. Fertilizing avocado trees is simple. There's no science to it. Don't let your grandfather complicate it. Don't let your neighbors complicate it. All you need is a bag of 6-6-6 blend fertilizer. Fertilizers are designated by ratios, the ratios of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So a 6-6-6 blend has 6 units of nitrogen, 6 units of phosphorus, and 6 units of potassium. That leaves 82 units of filler. Different plants take different blends. Avocados react great to 6-6-6. You can get it at Home Depot, Lowe's, your local garden center, wherever. The amount and frequency of fertilization depends on the maturity of your tree. This mature Simmons behind me, for example, and all its mature brothers and sisters here in the grove, get about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds of 6-6-6 blend fertilizer 3 times per year, or once every 4 months. For younger, smaller trees, say up to 4 years old, like you might have growing in a pot in your patio or in your backyard, like this guy here, I give these guys about a red Solo cup every 60 days. For trees that are planted in the ground, especially juvenile trees, do not apply the fertilizer right on top of the trunk. Give yourself like a 2 to 3 foot radius and go around in a circle. And if you have your tree in a pot, don't go with a whole red Solo cup. Just go with a couple of spoonfuls around the edge of the pot. Now remember, a meal is not just food. Fertilizer's the food, but you also have to supply your trees with water. And as a general rule of thumb, you want to water your tree every 3 to 4 days. Now, if you live in a particularly humid area, you might want to stretch that out to every 5th to 6th day. If you live somewhere that's really dry, you may need to water every other day. But if your tree is in the ground and you're not getting frequent rain, it's important to make sure you water. For trees in a pot, you could just kind of pinch the soil. If it's damp, you're good. If it's starting to dry out, give them a little bit of water. At the end of the day, that avocado tree in your backyard is an energy conversion machine. It's taking nutrients out of the soil, including that fertilizer you just gave it, combining it with water, and then using the energy from the sun to create fruit. Which brings us to tip number 2. Sunlight. Look behind me here, you'll see 2 rows of avocado trees. And look at how uniformly shaped they are. They are the same height, they are relatively the same width. And we have these trees trimmed to maximize their exposure to sunlight. Notice you don't see like a big giant oak tree or a big building or something like that that would be blocking out the sun. Do you have a big pine tree or a big oak tree or something that is blocking out the sunlight to your avocado tree? Maybe you could trim it. Did you plant your tree too close to the house and your house is casting shade on the tree? You can call a contractor and have them tear your house down. Whatever it is you need to do, remove what is blocking the sunlight to your tree. Here's a little something about the physics of an avocado tree. 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, a proton was created in the middle of the sun. And for 500,000 years, that proton has been bouncing around off of other protons, making its way from the core of the sun to the sun's surface. 500,000 years, that proton has been traveling. 7 minutes and a few seconds ago, it finally made its way to the surface of the sun, and it said, "See ya," and it shot toward Earth at light speed. It's a photon, right? It travels at light speed. Well, it turns out it takes just about 7 minutes and a few seconds for a photon to leave the surface of the sun and travel to Earth. And you know what happened just about a second ago? That photon that's been traveling from the core of the sun for 500,000 years just smacked right into this leaf. And the leaf is going to use a process called photosynthesis to convert the energy from that proton eventually into a piece of fruit. It will convert the energy from that photon into matter. Now, later down the line, in a few months, since this is a Simmons tree around the end of June, somebody's going to eat this avocado, and their human body will transform this matter back into energy. And that person will use that energy to go on about their day. All because one teeny tiny little photon, and billions others just like it, spent 500,000 years traveling from the core of the sun to hit a leaf on this tree. So don't you think if the photon is working that hard and that long to help you create fruit, the least you could do is eliminate shade-causing elements in your backyard? Now that you've pruned that oak tree, or maybe cut down that old crab apple, and you're letting the light shine freely onto your tree, there's one more thing you might not have considered to eliminate shade, which is the tree itself. And that brings us to tip number 3. Properly prune your tree. Something a lot of people don't realize is that the upper limbs and leaves of a tree may provide too much shade and actually block out the light from the lower part of the tree. You don't want to have one big dominant branch casting shade on the rest of the tree. You want your tree to be balanced. You want your tree to be nice and round. You want your tree to be open to the sunlight. Now behind me is an example of a very well balanced tree. It's nice and round. It doesn't have one primary branch, going up and blocking everything out. And it is also open, so it allows sunlight to shine through itself. Now I'm not sure if you could see it real good with this tree, but it's actually very open in the middle. But here's another example of a really open tree here behind me. Yeah, look at that guy. You see that? You see how nice we have that prune so it's open, so the sunlight actually penetrates the canopy of the leaves a little bit, so that those photons I talked about are hitting the leaves all around the tree. A properly pruned tree encourages new and healthy growth like we see right here. See all this nice light green, these colorful leaves coming in? That's all new growth. And the only reason that's there is because we pruned off this tree a few months ago. And you might not be able to see it in the camera here, but here's a nice green branch of new growth, and you see these are all the flowers it put out. And then right here at the end is a little avocado starting to grow. So tip number 3 is keep a well-balanced tree. Prune it regularly. Before we get into tip number 4, a warning. If you're at work, I want you to put your headphones on or turn the volume down. If there's any small children nearby, ask them to leave the room, because we're going to talk about sex. Tip number 4 is pollination. You see, avocados make babies the same way humans do, through sexual reproduction. For avocados, that process is known as pollination. For human beings, we got a lot of other words for it, but it's essentially the same concept. You need a male and a female to combine their DNA to produce a baby. In the case of avocados, that baby is a seed. What surrounds that seed is the fruit you eat. So the better the pollination, the more sex these trees are having, the more fruit you get. You want to encourage as much pollination as possible. You want to set the mood. Light a few candles, put a little Barry White on the boom box. Oh wait, I'm talking about avocado. Sorry, wait, no. Avocados reproduce using flowers. And I just broke this little tip of the branch off. I hate to do that, but I just broke this off so I could demonstrate to you what that means. So here you see we have some flowers. And again, these were encouraged because of proper pruning, like in step 3. But you see we have these flowers here. And on this side, I actually have flowers that are open. And if I look, I see that these flowers are open as males, which means that they are giving off pollen. So at some point today, a honeybee is going to come flying behind me and he's going to go sniffing around these flowers. And when he hits these male flowers, the pollen from this flower will transfer onto his fur. And then he'll go buzzing down the grove, buzzing down the row here, right? Stopping at these other trees along the way. And eventually, he'll get to a tree whose flowers aren't open as male, but whose flowers are open as female. And as he's buzzing around in that flower, the pollen he picked up off of this flower will rub off of his fur and actually pollinate and fertilize the female flower on the other tree. Those two trees just had sex. I guess you could say they had a threesome if you count the honeybee. Honestly, I don't even want to know what goes on out here when my back is turned. So what can you do as a grower to encourage pollination? Well, first of all, and this might not be an option for everyone due to space restrictions, but first of all, you're better off having 2 trees than 1. Avocado trees are capable of self-pollination, and I will explain that, but you're better off having 2 trees. And it's also important the way you select those trees. You want them to be of complementary flowering types. Now, I know this tree behind me right here is a Monroe variety avocado tree. And I know that the Monroe variety is a type B. Earlier today, I was standing in front of a Simmons avocado tree. Remember I showed you that Simmons? I happen to know that Simmons are type A. And I just showed you that this Monroe flower was open as male, which means it is giving off pollen. Well, down the road down there, right where we were standing a few minutes ago in front of the Simmons, that Simmons tree, which is a type A, is open as female, which means it is receptive to pollen. So the flowers on that tree are being pollinated from the flowers on this tree. Tomorrow morning that will reverse. And the flowers on my type A trees, my Simmons, my Donnies, my Choquettes, they will open as male. And the flowers on the Monroe, this same exact flower, not a different flower, the same exact flower, this will close tonight and it will reopen tomorrow as female. The A's will be giving off pollen, and the B's, like this Monroe, like my Hall, like my Lulas, they will be receptive to pollen, and the A's will be fertilizing the B's. So if you haven't planted any avocado trees in your yard yet, and you plan to, try to plant more than 1 if you can. And when you talk to the nursery, tell them you want 1 of type A and 1 of type B. If they don't know what you're talking about, go to another nursery. If you've already got a tree in your backyard and you know the variety, then you can Google it, and Google will tell you whether it's flowering type A or B. And if you have space for a second tree, you can go to the nursery and get yourself a tree of a different variety. If you've got a B in your yard, get an A. If you've got an A in your yard, get a B. And I want you to plant those trees about 12 to 16 feet apart from each other. Look behind me here. You'll see the spacing we have, and you'll notice that the branches actually touch. The branches actually overlap. So remember, this is a type B. Right now it's open as male and it's giving off pollen. If I have a type A and it's 500 feet away, the bee's got to travel really far. But I want to make that job easy for the bee. So if my branches overlap and he's buzzing around just landing on flowers, he's landing on a male flower, picking up pollen, lands over on a female flower, dropping that pollen off, boom, he just made you a piece of fruit. He jumps back over to a new flower, picks up more pollen, goes over to that, he just made you another piece of fruit. So if you have complementary flowering types and you plant them close together so that they overlap, you will maximize your fruit production. Now, a question many of you have. What if I only have 1 tree and I only have space for 1 tree? How do I maximize pollination? Here's what I want you to do. When you see the little flowers pop out on your tree, I want you to go out once in the morning, once in the afternoon. I want you to just shake your tree a little like this. Just like this. I want you to simulate the wind. Don't shake it so hard that you knock the flowers off. Just shake it a little bit. Because avocados are incredible survivors. They pollinate A to B and B to A so that they maintain genetic diversity, and we know that's what allows a species to thrive and survive. But they also allow for self-pollination. So every now and then a flower like this one here that's open as male, every now and then while it's open as male, the female organs are also exposed and receptive to pollen. And when the wind blows, that flower shakes a little bit. And when it shakes, the pollen separates from its male organs and actually touches the female organs, and the flower will self-pollinate. So if you only have one tree in your yard and you notice you don't get a heck of a lot of fruit, I want you to go out in the springtime when you see the flowers out there. Just give it a little shake. Now come on, let's go look at a few trees and I'll show you how the fruit's coming along early in the season. Okay, I'm back in front of the Simmons. And I'm happy to say that this Simmons and my other Simmons trees are doing amazing right now. Take a look at all this fruit. These happen to be my largest variety. And these dinky little fruit you see before you right now will be 3 pounds each in just about 90 days. Now let's contrast that with a mid-season variety called Pollock. Here's my Pollock, and it too is loaded with fruit. But take a look. They're not quite as big as the Simmons. And that makes sense, right? The Simmons we start picking in late June, early July. These Pollock we will start picking in August. So they're about 60 days later than the Simmons. And these grow to about 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds each, maybe 1.75 pounds on average. I'm coming up on another mid-season variety here called Catalina. This is a very popular backyard variety all around Miami, all around Dade County. And much like the Pollock, it is full of fruit. Now just across the row here is a choquette tree. It's also got some fruit set already, but they're teeny tiny. And a lot of you have tried our choquettes. A lot of you love the choquettes. I get a lot of requests for boxes of choquette variety. And then we finished the year out with Monroe, which is this tree behind me. These we don't start picking till right around Halloween. And it took me a while to even find one, but we're just starting to set some fruit on this tree. I'll break it off. I hate breaking a piece of fruit off, but let me show you just how small the avocados are here starting on the Monroes. Now you may already have been doing one or a few or all of the 4 things I just talked about, and maybe you're getting great fruit production out of your tree. But for those of you who've been struggling, you now know how to properly fertilize and water your tree. You now know the importance and how to get the right amount of sunlight. We talked about why pruning a tree and keeping a balanced tree is important, and we finished with how to maximize pollination. If you try all that and you still don't get fruit, you want to give up and buy your own, go to guacfarm.com. guacfarm.com. When we have our fruit in season, we sell it out there in 8 to 10 pound boxes. We sell these t-shirts all year round. And when we have supply, we sell these beautiful grafted trees. Now this happens to be a tree we did a video a couple months ago. And look at how beautiful this graft took. This is a choquette avocado. This will be up for sale at guacfarm.com in another couple of months when it's strong enough to ship. You may have noticed as we were walking through the grove, there were a couple of blank spots, places where I'm missing trees. I had to yank some sick trees out, which means today I got to go out and plant some new ones to take their place. So while I go do that, you go to guacfarm.com and I will see you on the next video.